Hey guys, Darren Kelly, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome to the moment we've all been waiting for. The AFL Fantasy website is officially live and we can start picking our teams. And what better way to kick off this season than to do a December team reveal? So let's get into today's video where I'll be going through and just putting a bit of a draft team together to see what we're sort of looking at for 2025. Let's get into it.
All the pain.
Let's get into today, guys. So straight up on the website, this first time I've loaded into it. 82 days out from the potential lockout, or the partial lockout for round one. Again, not round zero, round one. What's changed, I guess, is something that I want to quickly look at. Obviously, we sort of already got given the information that the salary cap has gone up by by $2 million from last year. We had $15.8 million last year. Now we're up to 17.8, which to anyone that doesn't probably know fantasy super well, it seems like it'd probably make it easier because we have more cash to spend. But the magic number has also increased quite drastically and means all the players are more expensive. And when you get into the number crunching of things, it actually means it's a little bit harder because that percentage of the magic number has gone up slightly more than what the salary cap is. So that potentially means that we may struggle a little bit in terms of fitting more primos in. But I don't think we're going to struggle too much this year when we have a lot of value to go through. So what I wanted to do to kick this season off is just sort of put a team together to see who we're really looking at. And go from there. So obviously this is subject to change. We're still 3-4 months out. I'm sorry, 3 months out from round one, and there's going to be a whole bunch of things to come through in the preseason, like track watches, whether that's injuries that happen, all these sort of things that are going to affect our fantasy teams. But what better way to kick off the season than to put a team together? So obviously, we've got 6 defenders, 2 on the bench, and then you got 8 midfielders, 2 on the bench again, and then so forth. So we've got lots of players to go through, and I guess I don't want to go into too much detail about each player at the moment. Obviously, you can check out all my other videos where I go into a bit more detail about those specific players. I'm currently doing my club preview series, so doing a bit of a deep dive on every single club, so you can see those videos. But to kick it off, it's pretty obvious. Sort of I want to start in the forward line. I think that's where a lot of the tension has gone so far this preseason, and I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I think a lot of our teams are going to be very similar. Let's just slot them in. You got Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, and where'd he go? Oh, already messing up. Where'd he go? Come here. Jack McRae. The 3X dogs, slot them straight into your forward line. That's already half the forward line done for us. And they are absolute bargains for us. Jack McRae is a bit more on the pricier side, but for what he can do, I have no concerns with him at all. Stop down there, please. So yeah, I love every single one of these picks. They're super easy. The only one that maybe has a bit of questions is Bailey Smith because he has the opening round. That means he has an early round bye, but I think he's too much value that you have to go with him either way. He's going to go up in cash so much. He's going to have this awesome role where he's just going to be a pure midfielder at the Cats. He should just rack it up. We've seen him in the past average probably, I think, around that 100 mark when he was at the Bulldogs, playing as that midfielder. So he absolutely slots in there for me. Same with Cal Daniel, slotting into that halfback role at North Melbourne, and Jack McRae should slot into a full CBA role at the St Kilda. So those three, lock them in and never look back. Moving on to a few more forwards, I want to slot in Philippou. Again, probably another one that's pretty common amongst all the fantasy community. So he slots in right next to McRae, in between Bailey Smith. I think this is sort of the structure a lot of people will go with, and the other two are probably interchangeable. Whether you want to go with a bit of more of an expensive forward line, you could probably drop Caleb Daniel down to an F6 spot and then put 2 more expensive primos in there. What I want to do, I want to slot in Hewitt in down at F6 there. I think he gets a lot more CBAs this year after not playing many games at all last year, or 0 games, I believe. I think that's correct from last year, or is it this year? I can't remember. Yeah, so he's heavily discounted, priced down at the rookie price, not basement price, but down low enough. And for what he's been able to do previously is, yeah, it's super an easy pick for us all. I'll leave this spot for now because that's sort of a tricky spot for me. I'm still tossing out where I want to sort of spend my money, whether I want to, go with a bit more of a value look, or do I want to spend up and put those primos in that I don't feel like I have too much confidence in those more expensive guys in the forward line at the moment. So I'll hold up and see how the team looks. Now, just a reminder, guys, I have not done this before. I haven't. This is the first time I've touched the AFL Fantasy website this year. So I haven't put a team together. So this is all off the cuff. I'm not sure how it's going to go in terms of the salary, but we'll work through it together. We'll go into the back line now because I think that's probably. Oh, sorry. I'll do the Ruckman. I'll move up. I'll go up. So Ruckman, I think a lot of people. It's already at 50%. Cherry slots into my Ruck line there. I just think he is going to be the next fantasy pig for us. I think he'll be crowned in 2025 as a fantasy pig. What he was able to do in the back half of last year was just incredible. I think he went 3 150s in a row, and that included like a 160, 2 160s, I think. So, yeah, he is just a gun when it comes to just tapping it to himself and then just hugs like no other. So, he is just one I want to lock in and play a bit more of a set and forget sort of role in the ruck line. It worked for me back in 2023 when we had, Rowan Marshall and Tim English. Yes, they were a bit more on the cheaper side and they both had improving roles, so it was a bit of an easier one to just sort of slot in, where we're going to have to pay up for these sort of guys this year. But I just love what Cherry can do, and I think even at his 114 price, I think that's still a little bit under of what he could do. I think he could push well into the 120s next year. The second Ruck spot, I might leave free for now, just because I'm not 100% sure whether, I pay up for a Rowan Marshall or I try and go a bit of a cheaper option like a De Koning. And English could even be an option for that because he was a bit down on his last year's role, but he didn't look good. I'm pretty confident I don't want to go the Max Gorn, just for he's injured at the moment with a bit of a, I don't even know exactly what it was, but yeah, he's a bit injured at the moment and he is very pricey. And he's obviously aging. I think he is, 30, 32. And just a few concerns for me. I don't know if I'll trust him at this point in time. There's probably even an argument you could go with a Jordan Sweet, since he's got that number one role. Sean Darcy's cheap off of a pretty injury-riddled year, which is pretty common for him. Lloyd Meek does have the opening round and will have an early bye, but he's got that number one slot now and has shown to be a fantasy gun too. But that's probably as far as I go. Finn could also be another one if he takes that number one spot at the West Coast Eagles. But that's probably about it for me. So I'll leave it free for now. But one thing's for certain, I'm just going to slot in Max Heath at the R3 spot. Absolutely, I'm just going to be throwing this position away this year and just using that as a loop at some point. So he'll be my looping option, and Cherry will probably be my captain a lot to start the season. Moving into the midfield line. Where do we start? Do we start with rookies or do we start with the value options? I think I'll just start with the rookies, just because a lot of us have already got these guys in. So Nashcroft can go in there, Draper can get in there, Jagger Smith, Sam Lawler, he will play. Smiley is another one I expect to play. Yeah, so that's already 5 rookies locked in. Obviously, some of these will be on the bench. Throw Draper on the bench. Throw Levi Ashcroft on the bench. I don't know. It's going to be really based off nothing at this point in time. I know Sullivan as well. North, he can slot into the utility spot for now. I think what most people are going to be doing this year is really going a bit lighter on in the midfield. So they might go with 4 rookies, just because I think there's so much value elsewhere that we're probably spending up a little bit in other lines that could potentially lead us to allow myself to put more rookies into the midfield, which because they're going to rise up and get cash so quickly, they are fantasy relevant. It was quite a deep draft in terms of their ability, and I think a lot of these guys are going to play round one. Like, they have so much talent, they have so much potential of being anything. Like, just Lawler, obviously number one pick. How does he not play in the Richmond side? I think he has to slot in there. Even a Smiley's absolutely killing it, so he'd slot in at some point. I think he probably slots in even a little bit before Lawler, just the way things in the preseason are going. Jacob Smith is probably my only skeptical one, just obviously going to Carlton. Where does he sort of slot in? Do they just throw in the pick number 3? They've shown to be a bit cautious with their picks previously, but I think they might have a bit of pressure to just throw him in there. So he is one that has to go on the list. And what he is able to do with his high disposal game, he can absolutely be a fantasy gun for us in the future. I even think I referenced him being very similar to a Tom Mitchell, or the likes of Zach Merritt. Sort of, they just that way they just accumulate the ball. So he is definitely one. Sid Draper is another one that I think could definitely get a go at the Crows. Obviously being quite a high draft. I think we went at pick 5, or pick 4. Pick 4, sorry. He probably slots in at some point, whether that's a midfield role or plays a bit more of a forward or even a defender role. I think they slot him in somewhere. It's just where that's going to be. So we'll have to learn on that one. But I'm happy to pay up for all these rookies. And Levi Ashcroft definitely comes in. They chased him a lot. So, but there is an argument to say that you don't want to pick with him because he does have the opening bye. Opening round, and then he has an early round bye, which is round 3, which is the hardest one to have. But I think with the amount of value and how much price rise he's going to have, you're going to need him either way. I think that will do it for the rookies for now. I'll just put in a few of the value options that I'm really looking at this preseason in the midfield. So I think I'll throw Clayton Oliver in there for now. That may not stick. I just think he can get back to being a bit more Clayton Oliver-like. He obviously was a shocker last year where obviously he's had his off-field issues and he's battling some health things going on, but he's well down on his average. I think he was average 110 last year and he's down to priced at 77.7. So he can be absolutely anything and presents plenty of value for us. So he slots in there for now. I really wish there was a way I could get rid of DPP options because I just want midfielders. I'll throw James Peatling in there. I really like what he's doing so far in this preseason. I think he gets a midfield role at the Crows. Priced down at 634k. Definitely very cheap. When I did the research, I probably should bring up my research. I think he averaged 85-ish when he played a midfield role at GWS. So I think he can get to that sort of range pretty quickly. So I think he easily comes in. Oh, it was 8. I just pulled it up. When he had 40% time in the CBAs at GWS, he averaged 88 over 11 games. So he's well undervalued. 25 points of value at a minimum if he can get that role, which I think he will. And I also really like the Crows' run. They have quite a simple, easy run to start off. Like St Kilda, we know they give up plenty of points. Essendon, probably on the decline a little bit for me, so I think they give up plenty of points too. North, we know what they do. And these probably two are a little bit up in the air for me. Just looking at the first 5 rounds for now. With the Suns probably on the up a little bit, and Cats always around that mark. So, but have previously shown to be an easy team to score against. So James Peatling slots in there for me, and so does his teammate Isaac Cumming. I really like what he can bring to the Crows. Obviously slotting into a halfback role, so he will pick up defender status. I think it's probably round 6, if not going into round 7, one of those two. So he will slot back into the defensive line at some point for us and free up a midfield spot. But I think this guy can easily go closer to an 80 average, if not closer to 90, just with a few more points back there. He's shown that he's been able to do that previously with his history in fantasy. So he is absolutely one that he slots in my side there. And look how much value we got so far. Another pick that I just think has to slot in here and I'm surprised he's not picked more, is Sam Doherty. Again, probably another one that will pick up defender status potentially if he slots back into the halfback role. But he only played one game last year in the home and away season, so he has got a massive discount on him after having the ACL. He has previously been the number one defender for us for a couple of years, so he can do anything. Yes, he's getting a bit on the older side now with 31, but I think with a fit and firing preseason, he can easily push back into that $1 million price range. And it would be nice if he pick up some defender status, but there's potential that he probably just stays on a wing where he has been for the probably little bit of the last season. So yeah, I think when I did the research, what was it? He got subbed out on 48 last season, so that's the 48 there. But that was in less than 50% game time, so just simple math, you double that, so it's nearly 100. So I'm not saying he will average 100 next season, but it definitely, with what he's been able to do, he averaged 102 and 110 in the last 2 seasons, so he does have that in his caliber. So I think he easily slots into my midfield there. I'll leave that final spot there for now, just in case I want to see how the pricing rolls up, if I can fit another Primo in, or if it's a rookie instead. So we'll move into the defensive line, and I think we've got a few cheaper guys that we want to slot in there pretty quickly. If I scroll back up, Kitty Coleman is probably one of the easier picks to go for me. We know how good of a fantasy scorer he has been, or is looking like he's going to be very shortly. Obviously, we look back at his grand final 2 years ago, well, a year ago now. He absolutely killed it. I think it was like 100 at halftime. So he knows how to rack up the ball, and he would have been massive last year, but unfortunately had that ACL injury in opening round last year, and yeah, unfortunately missed the rest of the season. So he's got a massive discount, and that's why he's priced down at 521k. My only question around him is how does he slot in next to the likes of Zorko and even a Duday next to him as well? Just those sort of guys, even a Wilmont. There's a lot of guys back there that do require a bit of the peel. I wouldn't say Duday in that, but yeah, definitely. How does that affect him in terms of his disposals? I still think he obviously increases his average, but whether that gets him to a 70 or an 80 is probably more the question. It's just what's his limit. I don't think he'll be enough to push into the top 6 defenders. That's probably for sure, but he's probably one of the easier ones to pick this preseason. One I'm really keen on is Callum Mills. I haven't spoken about him much at all, but he is another one that I'm really keen on. Now that John Longmire's sort of out of the team, no longer coaching the Swans. He's obviously only played 6 games last year, so he's got a pretty big discount. And for what he's been able to do in the past, where he's averaged pretty close to 110 for us in a season, he is very, very cheap. My only thing is I don't see him slotting into a midfield role again. I think they're pretty structured in that sense that they really like who they've got in there in Heaney, Warner, and a few others. I can't even remember their names right now. So I just don't see how he slots in there unless it's going to be like a little bit of like a 40% sort of role. I don't think he'll be that main midfielder in there. So I really like what his presents value, and I think he can still get the job done in our defensive lines, even if he's playing as a halfbacker for the Sydney Swans. So he slots in there. I'll pick a rookie just because I can see him there. He probably slots into my either D6 spot or on the bench. Bo Allen's also another one I'm keen on. I won't dive too deep into the rookies because we really don't know too much about them just yet. But from what their VFL numbers are showing, they're both very potentially very good fantasy players for us, and also have a pretty good high chance of slotting into their relative teams with obviously some availability. Scrolling down the list here, Jaden Short is probably my next one. Oops, it's you. Jaden Short is my next one. I just think with the Tigers sort of bottoming out a little bit further, the ball's going to spend more time in the back line. That means more kickouts for Jaden Short and potentially more of this chip ball mark game that we know Jaden Short can absolutely rack up in. So I think he presents some value at his 825k price tag. That's pretty much all I can say about that. He has averaged a lot higher in the past, so definitely one I'm pretty keen on. So he slots in there. And then I'll put a primo in here as well in Jack Sinclair. I just looking at the price range now. I've only got that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots available, and I've still got $5 million. So I probably need to spend up a little bit somewhere. And I think that defensive line is probably where I'm struggling the most with in terms of value. So I'll probably spend up a little bit in the defensive line this season. So Jack Sinclair does present some value with what he has been able to do in the past. Down at 102, pretty much average, just over $1 million. So I think he could be a little bit of value, probably push that sort of 107 range if he's consistent in his role. He spent a period of time last year in the midfield, and I think he slowly transitioned back to that halfback. So, which is where I probably prefer him, honestly. I think he just racks it up back there. So, hoping he stays there, but definitely one slots into my side. Rolling down the list again. Who else was I missing? Duday is probably one I've spoken about, but I don't think I'll slot him into my side just yet. Priced at below 400k is just ridiculous for a player of his caliber, but I don't think he's super fantasy relevant. He has averaged 60 previously, but I don't know if that's going to be enough value for me with the potential injuries that he constantly seems to have. I know Perryman, people are pretty keen on him. I just don't see it. I feel like I'm missing someone that I should know. Yeah, I've got a bit of money left over, so maybe I'll throw in a Harry Sheezel for now. Now, I'm not super keen on Harry Sheezel to begin with. Like, he's priced at 112, and there's obviously he's transitioning into this midfield role where he spent a bit of time last season, sort of in between that halfback and midfield role. And I was one of the first ones to jump off him last year, and that sort of didn't work at the same time. Like I jumped off at the right time and got some big scores from a Luke Ryan, but Harry Sheezel just continued to be a very good pick all season. So he's just a fantasy gun. He knows how to rack up the field. The teammates look for him no matter where he plays. My only concern is if he plays a bit forward, which obviously was where he was drafted. So when you look at their likes of their midfield, I could probably even bring it up here for you guys. Who are they fitting into the midfield? Obviously, Luke Davies-Uniacke's sort of the mainstay guy. Does that change? You got Wardlaw, who's coming through the wings. Will Phillips probably doesn't make the team next year, unfortunately. You got Jai Simpkin, their captain. He probably spends a bit more time forward as well in that 50-50 role. I've already heard that they will probably be doing a 50-50 role between Simpkin and Luke Parker, so they'll be switching here and there. Tom Powell's another one. He spent a bit of time in the halfback role as well. So where does he sort of slot in? Obviously, we're speaking about Harry Sheezel. He sort of popped up here and there. Does that get a bump or does that slowly decrease and spend more time forward? Then you've got the likes of McKercher. He was a midfielder when they drafted him. Does he start to get more time in there? He had bits and bobs last year. Then you've also got their rookies that they've just drafted in Finn Sullivan. Where does he slot in? I think he probably slots into this halfback role where they seem to always be putting their draftees, the high priced draftees, to allow them to get used to the game speed and the ferocity of the game. So that's where I see him, and I think they're just going to slowly tick forward more. So I probably see Sheezel playing a bit more forward this year, probably playing more of a midfield forward role, slotting into where he was drafted. So. But that doesn't mean he's going to be a terrible pick. I still think he can be averaging over 100, but he's going to be a forward. It'd probably be a race against time whether he gets a midfield DPP or he gets a forward DPP. Fingers crossed it's forward because I would love to have him as a top 6 forward for us because he would quite clearly be one of the top forwards for us. It's probably a bold call to say that that's going to happen. I think he probably has a bit more of a midfield role early on in the season before he has a minority forward role. So either way, he'll be getting DPP and he'll be able to slot into other lines, but I don't think he'll want to be clogging up a midfield spot. So just to spend some money, I'll throw him in there now. Not that he presents any value. I just want to have a bit more secure defensive line for now. Let me just quickly rearrange this because I'm sure you're all yelling at me in the comments. I'll even do that for these guys. I should just make a button. I know there's mods and stuff that you can get where they auto rearrange based on price, but I just can't be bothered downloading that. I should look into it for fantasy for content purposes, but that's all right. I'll leave that spot free because there is a bit of a cheeky option that I'm really looking at that really no one else has picked up yet. So stay tuned for that. What I will do is just quickly fill in these forward rookie options. I think Kaku is probably one that I'm pretty keen on. I think he slots into the Essendon side pretty easily. And then I'll go with Dan Curtin. I know what he's capable of from a fantasy point of view, and I think he does get a lot more game time next year in 2025. So I'm happy to pay up for him. So I think he slots into the best 22. And the other one would be Joe Barry. I think he comes into the power side pretty early on with his talent. Robbie Gray picked him, and all of his sort of picks have been going really well. So they'd probably back him to play a fair few games. But that's sort of the forward line done. We've got one position left on each side, and we've got $3.2 million. So we can probably afford to spend up a little bit here and there. What I will do, I'll go and set and forget. I'll go Rowan Marshall in my R1 spot and put Cherry R2. That leaves me $2 million to spend on 3 positions. How do I go about this? Is there any other rookies that I'm missing out? I feel like there is. Harvey Langford. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I need him. So I think I might go with it's a really cheap midfield line, and it kind of scares me a little bit, but we'll see how it goes for now. I really like Harvey Langford as well. He is a fantasy gun waiting to happen. Looking at all his junior numbers, he can absolutely rack up the pill. I'm just, again, Melbourne, do they start to rely on more kids, or are they trying to climb up the ladder again with their list? I'm a bit unsure. I think they're probably definitely on the decline. I even probably picked them to have them be bottom 4 this year. So I think Harvey Langford definitely get some time, and again, will rise up in cash really quickly. So that's the midfield done for now, unless I want to make some changes afterwards. Let's fill this forward spot. Well, I've got $1.7 million, so I can spend up a bit of a more expensive option. Now, Horne-Francis, I know people are picking him, obviously 35% already is ridiculous for me. I've always just thought of him being an impact player. I did pick him, not last year, but the year prior, when he was priced about 60. Think he can do 80. He's obviously improved on that and done close to 90. I just don't think that's probably his limit, I think. I don't expect him to go up much higher, nor do I expect him to really go much worse, because he's in that role. That role is going to be pretty consistent for him for the next fucking probably 10 years. But I'm just looking at, obviously, you got Rosie, Butters next to him, being the triple threat. Does Wines eventually move out of that midfield a little bit as well? That opens up more points for him potentially. Just looking at, there's a lot of points in that midfield. Like, you're thinking Wines probably averages 80, Rosie's at 100, and Butters was at 105 or something like that. So that's a lot of points that they're really relying on the midfields. And I think Rosie even had a bit of a weird year where he was injured a fair bit, so he probably slots more into midfield. Does that mean Horne-Francis spends more time forward? So for me, I'm not super keen on Horne-Francis at this point in time, just because I don't think there's any value there. But if you're confident that he's going to be a top 6 forward, which priced at 90, he's going to be absolutely about that somewhere, then absolutely go for it. If you want to go for a cheaper guy, I do like the likes of Rankin. Here's another one. He is obviously getting some more time at the Adelaide Crows in terms of getting that midfield role. I do think he probably spends more time forward with their inclusions with Peatling and probably not coming, but definitely Neil Bullen probably affects that role as well. Shea Bolton is another one I'm keen on. I would say Dylan Moore as well, but because he has the opening round bye, I'm just not super keen on playing for someone that is not really value and going to be missing around early on in the season. Unless I expect them to go absolutely massive like we saw Tom Green last year. I think averaged like 130 in the first 2 or 3 games before their before their early bye, which got people off to an absolute flyer. I don't see that happening just with those sort of players. Shea Bolton, I'm not super keen as well, but if he replaces like the Fife role where Fife is spending a bit of time in the midfield, then I think that would benefit Shea Bolton a lot. Continuing that role as a half forward midfield and continuing like a 40-60% role. I think he can get back to his sort of that 65%. We know Freo like to give it plenty of points around. Obviously, you're talking Sarong, Brayshaw, both in the hundreds there last year. Then you even had Hayden Young that was hovering around that 100 mark. I think maybe 95 or close maybe to a 90 to drop off to the end of the season. I think Bolton could be around that average as well. And that's probably where I'd prefer to see the Dockers go. But it's that awkward thing with what do you do with a Nat Fife who is clearly probably definitely past his prime and probably should be pushed out of the midfield now. He's just holding on because of his name. So I think they should push past that and let Bolton go into that midfield. So for that, I'll slot him in there for now, and we'll have to see how that eventuates over the preseason. One more spot to go, and we've got $900 left. I probably won't spend all of that because the player that I am really quite keen on as a cheapy option is a Ryan Burton, 0.15% picked in the back line. I'm pretty keen on him this year. Just looking at the numbers of when Dan Houston went down last year, Ryan Burton slotted straight into that role, taking kick-ins, and he averaged 85, I believe it was, in that role. So he presents plenty of value for what he's done and can push up to an 85 average taking that role. So I like what he's producing, and I think he slots into my backline a little bit. Again, very deep backline. It's where I'm struggling the most this year to find value. So obviously a lot. Just running through this summary again, but picking 2 premiums that one's probably not value, but we should pick up another DVP and be able to move him around a little bit. Sinclair does provide a little bit of value. I think he can get back to his sort of 107s. Jaden Short, no role change, but I just expect the Bulls going to spend more time in the backline, so that means more pill for him. Callum Mills, again, probably not much of a role change, but he is cheap due to he's only playing 6 games, so he definitely presents some value. It's just what role is he going to play? I've spoken about Burton. I think the role is going to change for him. Just more consistent games with the likes of Houston out, more points available. There's probably an argument that you could even look at a Farrell. I'll talk about both those guys in the Port Club preview that will be coming up shortly. But I think Burton probably gets the most benefit out of them being the cheaper of the two. And Kenny Coleman's probably the lock of the defensive line quite easily. So, but that will sort of do it, I think. I finished with 300k left in the bank. I think that's pretty comfortable. If I really wanted to, if Oliver's not looking great, then I probably could, move him on and pick up a premium in the midfield just to sort of secure the lines a bit. That could be a Dacos. It could be anyone. I probably wouldn't pick someone that has the opening round and gonna miss the first part of the season, but could be Bontempelli, could be Rosie. I would like to go with the Merit, but because he's just super consistent, but he does have the opening round. A Taranto does present value as well if he can get back to his best, but someone has to score on that team. So does that mean more points for him potentially? Not going Petrarca. Walsh probably is already at a peak of his powers, but he does have Richmond the start of the season. That could be a nice way to kick off the season. There's so many options. Well, I think there's so much value that we're just got to really play it out. But I'll stick with Oliver for now, and we'll see how this develops. I'll do a bit of a comparison when we get to sort of that final team reveal. I think that'll be interesting to see. this is the start, and what actually happens throughout the preseason, and what actually changes, if anything. So, well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. I'll just quickly throw in the captains and VCs for shits and gigs, I guess. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is my December edition of the team for the Wise Ocean Pods. This is obviously going to change. Don't take too much into this, but hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you found out some little bit more of a juicy information that what I'm looking into, doing a bit of research so far this preseason. So I'll catch you guys in next couple videos. So I'll catch you guys then. Enjoy.